Hi, I'm Brian Lord, President of Premier Speakers Bureau, and welcome to Free Virtual Fridays. These are a great way for you to see new speakers and learn new ways that you can use virtual to help you and your team and your company get better. This week, our guest is Erica Dhawan. She is the 21st century expert on collaboration and connectional intelligence. She's got degrees from MIT and Harvard. When I talked to different agents and clients and I said, hey, who should we get? And they said, you've got to get Erica on this. And she's also an expert on digital body language, which I find pretty fascinating. So today, Erica is going to be talking today about get big things done, the power of connectional intelligence. So Erica, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you, Brian. In today's era of unprecedented change and uncertainty, our most powerful asset is how we connect with one another. As was shared, my name is Erica Dhawan, and my life's work is to help leaders and teams connect intelligently in a 21st century marketplace. A marketplace that is global, remote, multi-generational, matrixed, and beyond. In the last 7 months, we've seen more disruption and yet more innovation than in perhaps the last 10 years in some industries. Leaders have been forced to truly give up some of their power and empower their teams. Digital tools that got little traction for years are now requirements for innovation, brainstorming, collaboration, and celebration. And the question we all have to really ask ourselves now is not only how do we want to lead in our new normal, but how do we want to create a better normal? How do we make sure we don't revert to old habits and norms and make sure we use this moment of change to transform our organizations, transform our communities in new and better ways? In this session today, I want to share with you a critical leadership skill that I believe is a requirement not only to adapt to our 21st century marketplace, but will allow us all to build COVID-proof organizations, COVID-proof associations, COVID-proof communities. As I go through the presentation, I'd encourage you to really think about how are you using connectional intelligence across your organizations, with your teams, with your groups, and what are new and different ways that you could use the power of our connectivity today to create not only and adapt to the new normal, but create a better normal. Let me start with a quick story because we all know that connecting intelligently today isn't as easy as it sounds. Let me share a story between two colleagues, Sarah and John. Now in the white box is an email exchange between Sarah and John. And the black box is what they actually meant by the email exchange. They've been working together for about 6 years, and one Wednesday afternoon, Sarah has an idea for a project she's working on with John. So she shoots off a quick message to him saying, quick thought, what do you think of this idea for the deliverable? What she really meant was, I have a great idea. It's not fully fleshed out yet, but I'd love to get your thoughts. John gets this note at about 8 p.m. that night. He's exhausted after a long day of Zoom meetings, and he's confused because he thought the deliverable was done. So he didn't know why Sarah was sending it now. So he sends off a note saying, how would this fit in? Doesn't seem like you thought this through, ... What he really meant was, Sarah, you're closer to the work than I am. I need more context from you. At that point, Sarah's frazzled. She is concerned about the tone of John's message. She spends about 35 minutes that night after her 3 kids go to bed, crafting a structured email with 200 words, bold and underlined headings, changing the subject title from quick thought to deliverable changes. And she feels great. She feels like she got her ideas across. John reads the email and thinks to himself, this is pretty great. He doesn't say that in the message. He just sends off some more questions to her. Now at this point, Sarah's even more concerned. She can't read the tone and she thinks John is upset with her when he actually thinks things are pretty good and is just trying to get clarity. So she waits until the next morning. And the next morning, she sends a note saying, can we chat about this before our team meeting tomorrow? What she really felt was 5 exclamation points. This isn't a productive way of engaging. We need to get on the phone or we need to switch the medium. John gets this note and thinks to himself, you know what? I want to make sure we're on the right page well before that team meeting. So actually, can you send your thoughts in writing? What he really meant was, I just love to better understand this. Now, at this point, Sarah's about to have a heart attack. For her, what could have been a 15-minute exchange by phone or video call took 5 hours of time, stress, and fear over that 12-hour period. Now, if you've ever been in this situation before, think about, have you been Sarah, have you been John, or have you been both? We think we have communication down, but it's much harder than we think. We all know that roughly 3/4 of face-to-face collaboration is our nonverbal body language, our cues, our tone, our intonation. And pre-pandemic, roughly 70% of our team collaboration was already virtual. Now that's 100%. And it requires us to completely rewrite the rules of trust and collaboration, not only to adapt to our better normal, to our new normal, but create a better normal. Research shows that we're more likely to misunderstand each other behind a screen with the lack of tone and body language. We're also more likely to speak more freely. There's something called the online disinhibition effect that shows that when we are communicating behind screens versus in person with the same individual, we are more likely to have less empathy for them behind a screen. We can argue more. Passive aggressiveness behavior can shoot up in digital communications. And we can walk faster from relationships. Ghosting is not just a personal thing. It happens in sales meetings and business interactions and cross-team collaborations in today's age. So today I want to talk about a key leadership skill, a leadership skill that I've been studying for the last decade. When I really looked at teams and leaders that have been able to thrive, not only during this pandemic, but thriving in a multi-generational 21st century marketplace. It is through a key skill that I call connectional intelligence. Connectional intelligence is the capability to unlock new and unrealized value by fully harnessing the power of our networks and relationships. So what we all know was that emotional intelligence was a critical leadership skill in the 90s in environments that were office interactions built on body language and being able to read emotions in a room with one another. In today's world, we need to upgrade that in our skills around connectional intelligence in our virtual, global, matrixed world, where we can build trust and collaboration regardless of distance. Let me share some examples with you of connectional intelligence in action. This is a story about a home retailer, Lowe's, a top competitor to companies like Walmart and Target. And one of the things Lowe's began to significantly invest in a few years ago was a peer-to-peer cashier network, where any cashier at any store could chat, think about it like an internal Facebook with any other cashiers at other stores to share best practices and knowledge. And it was like a real-time chat room, and many other business units were also monitoring it to better understand what was going on through this connected network on the front lines. There was one cashier at one store in Virginia that noticed that many customers were returning a pet treat for dogs, and it was quite odd. So he posted about it. There was an overwhelming response from other cashiers at other stores. Turns out during that time and during this conversation, quality assurance, the business unit at Lowe's, was scanning the real-time conversations and ended up taking this product, this pet treat, off the market earlier than they would have through regular inventory optimization planning. And 3 months later, Lowe's top two competitors, Walmart and Target, ended up in a class action lawsuit because apparently there was a poisonous element in this pet treat for dogs. And without even realizing it, by designing ways to connect intelligently, to listen to those on the front lines, they avoid a class action lawsuit. So as we all think about the power of connectional intelligence today, what are those unique networks that may not have been connecting before, that could be connecting in new ways now digitally, that will allow us to bring innovation to our teams, collaboration, or speed of risk management and communication that can really allow us to move ahead and get big things done in our new normal? The second story I want to share is about a law firm. The CFO of this law firm noticed that the youngest associates of the firm were billing less hours than normal. And it was odd because they were giving them more work, not less work. When they dug into it, they discovered that this network of associates had created their own Twitter-type network to help each other solve cases faster. Questions like, where's this legal citation, or who's done this before? And it was such a rapidly productive community, beating out clunky meetings, email exchanges, and almost like a real-time knowledge network, sharing expertise across offices, practices, and beyond. Today, that law firm, well pre-pandemic, actually created peer-to-peer digital networks where instead of just working within teams, horizontally, they're creating networks. But what the firm also realized is that they could really capitalize on the connectional intelligence of their youngest employees, on the newest employees. They found that some of the newest employees, even at senior levels, had expertise on competitors, had expertise on clients that had they not created unique networks, they would never have discovered. So as we think about this story, how are ways we are able to leverage those that are newer to our organizations, those that can bring different insights and perspectives to help solve problems that we're facing now? The last quick story I want to share is about this creation of the Guacamole Dorito chip. And besides being a delicious product, this product would normally have come from the business unit marketing or innovation at Frito-Lay. But the genesis of this product actually came from the Latino Employee Resource Group at the company. When combined as a network around diversity and inclusion, they realized that beyond just employee engagement and employee recruiting, they were asking different questions. And one of them was, why don't we have a Doritos chip that effectively targets the Latino customer segment? They came up with a bunch of ideas. One of them was the guacamole flavor. They pitched it to product innovation. It became a multi-million-dollar product. Then the Asian network said, we want to do this too. And it became a regular practice where every single employee resource network was able to come up with products for that customer base. Now, this is a really interesting story, not just from the lens of the power of diversity and inclusion to drive business outcomes using connectional intelligence, but it's also really important in this time of change and thinking about what are unique connected networks that could come together to solve problems for the business. Whether it's a group of working mom employees that can help reimagine how new moms can come into the organization and thrive in our changing world, or engage with potential customers that may be busy, whether they're dealing with homeschooling or evening rituals and beyond in our changing world, or really thinking about unique segments of cohorts, whether it's locations across the US that are dealing with certain challenges in their regions versus other locations that may have different challenges as well. What I really want to do in our 20 minutes before we dive into questions is give you some practical tools, help you think about how can you use connectional intelligence in our changing world to create not a new normal, but a better normal, to really use this moment to up-level your organization's skills around connectional intelligence. This was always an important skill, but it's more important than ever because of the true lack of connectivity many of us feel. I also want to share that connectional intelligence is not about connecting more. We are in an environment where there are too many Zoom meetings, there are too many emails, there are too many video calls, and this is not about connecting more. This is about how do we connect intelligently in the right ways to really foster breakthroughs to allow all of us to feel motivated and aligned no matter the distance. I'm going to share with you what I call the 4 key principles of connectional intelligence. And you can use these to measure yourself, measure your teams, to think about best practices to get big things done in our changing world. The first key principle is that we have to value others visibly. Now, here's the truth. Valuing others visibly used to come from a lot of our body language cues, our head nod, our handshake, our smile in a team meeting. Today, valuing others visibly is valuing their time, valuing their inboxes, valuing their calendars. So when we tell people we need to reschedule 5 minutes before start time, or that we're double booked an hour before start time, or we don't show up at all to a meeting, or we say, where's the, what is this a meeting about when an agenda was sent? We're not valuing others visibly. I like to say reading carefully now is the new listening. And we talk a lot about we need to show empathy right now, and we need to show emotional intelligence, but many people don't have the rule book around connecting intelligently in our digital normal. So what does this look like? Valuing visibly means watching the clock. It means starting on time, ending on time, being thoughtful about people's time, sending those agendas in advance, acknowledging individual differences. In all my keynotes, I go through really best practices on how do you engage different styles in a digital world, whether it's introverts versus extroverts. Introverts really need that agenda before. If you're going to ask questions, Send them 48 hours in advance. Use the virtual chat tools to really engage people to speak in the chat first and share, and then call on people that have different or diverse opinions versus having extroverts take up all the airtime. There's also different styles I talk about in my keynotes, digital natives versus digital adapters. Digital natives are people that are really comfortable working virtually and remotely. Digital adapters feel like working in this new normal is like learning a new language. They feel like immigrants in a foreign world. And what's really important as leaders is using connectional intelligence to understand, how do I engage different styles at work? And even simple things like if you run a global team, I have specific content on those that are in Eastern cultures versus Western cultures as well, and different nuances to value others visibly. The last one is practice radical recognition. And this means, what was implicit in traditional body language now has to be explicit in what I call digital body language, which are really the new cues and signals in how we communicate. And that really brings me to the second principle of connectional intelligence, which is what I call communicating carefully. I'll share a story here from one of my clients. One of my clients sent a text message to his boss, Tom, during this period of time, during the pandemic, about a high priority meeting with a client saying, do you want to speak Wednesday or Thursday? And Tom's response was yes. Now, Tom was probably rushing, he was probably busy, but as I said earlier, in today's world, reading carefully is the new listening, and writing clearly is the new empathy. So we have to reimagine our consciousness around these things, thinking before we type, delivering with that maniacal clarity, and making sure we're also choosing the right channel. I like to say, whether you decide to have a Zoom meeting or a phone call or an email exchange or a town hall, you really need to understand that those are not trivial decisions. They are the new measures of priority. They help people assess what's the complexity, what's the familiarity, what's the length of this message, and how to engage. And what we're seeing right now is a lot of people having 30-person Zoom meetings when they should be 5 people. And instead they should be sending meeting summaries to the rest of those individuals, or sending the recording to the rest of those individuals. We're seeing a lot of people do video meetings for everything when, people are getting Zoom fatigue, and really video meetings should be only for a few things, and the rest could be phone calls or emails. We're seeing leaders getting bogged down in constant meetings instead of hosting, 30-minute virtual office hours every day where anyone can ping them around something. And then they're finding that their team members are not booking 30 minutes on their calendar for a 5-minute question. So simple ways to really think about, how am I being very clear? How am I making sure I know and telling others, what is the ask? What is the priority level? And being explicit about how I feel can make sure that you're communicating in a careful way in our changing world. The third key principle is to collaborate confidently. Now, what does this mean? Collaborating confidently is telling people what to do, but really thinking through how to make them successful in today's world, where they can't read your body language cues. They can't walk by your desk most of the time. And it's harder to get that time for nuanced discussion. So if we tell a teammate that we need a report by the end of the week, but then we make them rework it for 2 months because we didn't know what we wanted in that Zoom call because we were in Zoom overload, or what I like to call Zoom think, which is group think that happens in Zoom. Or we tell someone we'll get back to them soon, but we don't in 2 weeks with half an answer. Or we say, I need something by tomorrow, but it's really not urgent. We're not creating confidence. Confidence is not about having all the answers. It's about being able to tell your teams what you know, what you don't know, informing them in a consistent way, and helping them set priorities right now. Remember, some people are just trying to get through their days. They're working in the morning, homeschooling in the afternoon, working in the evening, or whatever it may be. Their lives have changed. And so we can't expect this 9-to-5 working schedule. I often say hierarchically organize priorities for your team and pay attention to those details. The last key principle is what I call trust totally. This is the integration of all 3. Once you value visibly, communicate carefully, and collaborate confidently, you can truly build a culture of trust no matter the distance. My research has actually shown that even pre-pandemic, virtual teams can outperform co-located teams, because trust is not about being in the office or reading body language. Trust is about giving people a sense of shared values and interdependence, and being crystal clear about what they need and how to empower them to do it. And that also involves creating cultures that give people the benefit of the doubt. If you think back to the Sarah John story, creating those virtual water cooler moments, I like to say, not just the happy hour, but regular moments in team meetings to share what's bad news I don't want to hear, or what's one challenge you're going through, so that people can create that culture of virtual psychological safety and showing your vulnerabilities, what you know, what you don't know, and how they can help you as well. I know we're almost out of time, but what I am really excited to share is that I truly believe that in this changing world, we've learned about IQ, we've learned about emotional intelligence for years, and connectional intelligence is really the next evolution to that. And as part of that, through my research over the last 5 years, I've been working on specific content on an additional sub-layer of connectional intelligence, which is a key skill that I call digital body language. And I have a new book coming out on digital called Digital Body Language. It's already available for pre-order on Amazon. But what I did for all of you that joined this session today is I created a special guide for you, available for free for download, called Successful Collaboration with Digital Body Language. And what it does is it includes best practices for how to use connectional intelligence in video meetings, in phone meetings, in email, and IM, in live meetings in a new normal with masks and distancing and beyond. And I hope you'll download it. I hope you'll share it with your teams to really think about how you can use connectional intelligence no matter the distance. And here's just a preview. It really gives you a checklist for different best practices that you can use with your teams, and also as meeting planners with your audiences, to truly use connectional intelligence in your virtual events and live events in our new normal. And I hope you'll think about actions you can take as well, which I always do with my keynote sessions. But if you like this presentation, we're about to go to Q&A. I hope you'll engage with me. I have weekly tips I share on LinkedIn. I have lots of different topics, whether it's collaboration, inclusion and belonging, resilience, retaining and engaging your high performers, as well as specific content for sales and marketing teams on using connectional intelligence and digital body language in our new normal, as well as my book. I want to thank you so much for joining. I truly believe that this is a moment in time where we can catapult, where we can avoid reverting and create a better normal for all. So I hope you'll join me in the movement to unleash connectional intelligence for all of those counting on your wisdom, your creativity, and your heart. And now we're going to move into a discussion and bring back Brian.
Yes, well, Erica, thank you so much for that. I really appreciate it. It's what's funny is you learn different things while you're doing this. I learned that it's impossible to write down Zook-think. It automatically goes back to look think every single time, because I'm like, oh, I love that little phrase because it's so true. But you can't type it down. I'm just gonna have to remember it. So we do have some questions. We'll start off real quick. So from Simon Fogg, how are collaboration platforms like Workplace from Facebook, Slack, MS Teams impacting our DBL?
They are transforming our DBL in many ways. In a lot of my keynotes and workshops, I share a lot of best practices in how do you modernize to new norms in each of these tools. So one of the first things they've done is shifted from formality to more informality in communications in digital body language. So for example, email is now more of that formal place for complex discussions, attachments, and sometimes in really messages out to clients or customers or audiences. Internally, Slack or Workplace are these tools for that water cooler discussion that's informal. So emotive language, smiley faces, LOLs, all those different styles are really the new digital language. They are making up for the head nod, the smile, the laughter, the giggles in the office, and they become more informal. And even 5 years ago, an emoji wasn't a big thing in the workplace. Now it's commonplace. And I even encourage executives with their teams, maybe not with their clients, obviously know your audience, to use them as well to sort of break down those barriers in our new normal.
So next one, so this one is from Kirti Vaswani. Erica, great presentation. What's a simple definition of connectional intelligence? Connectional
intelligence is the ability to create value, new or unrealized value, from the networks you have, from your networks. So A lot of ways that we measure networks especially in our digital world, is about quantity instead of quality. And connectional intelligence is about bringing that conversation back to quality, because having a lot of connections on LinkedIn or anywhere doesn't create measurable change. Having a lot of emails in your inbox doesn't make you more successful. We all know that. The key is how you leverage your networks. Maybe you need less emails and 15-minute stand-up virtual meetings with your team. Maybe you have virtual office hours every day from 10 to 11. So your team is not booking 30 minutes with you for every minute thing, but you're getting through 15 things in that hour with your colleagues. And so, it's really about reinventing how do we modernize our over connections in today's context.
So one thing I can tell the audience too is that you are great at this. Like just the emails leading up to this, this is our 25th, 30th type event like this. And every time I got an email, it's like, I'm so excited about doing it. Like you definitely conveyed that just through email. And I'm curious to know, I always like origin stories. Where did you get started into all of this?
Yeah. I was the shy, introverted Indian girl growing up in a suburban part of Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. And I didn't know how to find my voice as a kid. My parents spoke Punjabi at home, which was a dialect of Hindi. And at school, I kind of had an accent at the beginning, and I was shy in speaking up. I was sometimes made fun of. And I realized that because I was quieter, I developed a deeper sense of reading people's cues, reading their body language, reading what was being said that they were not saying, reading the subtext of the text. And it helped me build the skill that it's not just what people say, it's how they say it that creates empathy, trust, collaboration, engagement in just the world. But as I grew and as I discovered and found my voice, as you can see now, I realized that in many ways we're living in a similar context now. I was that immigrant girl trying to figure out body language. Now we're all immigrants to the world of digital body language. We're all trying to navigate it. And just like EQ in the 90s, we need to know how to use connectional intelligence as leaders, but also across our organizations with our members, if we're an association and beyond. And we have to really relearn these skills or flex new muscles to be able to adapt and create a better normal.
Absolutely, that's great. So another question from Simon Fogg here. What are the differences between Zoom fatigue and face-to-face meeting fatigue?
Great question. A lot of people think that video body language is going to replace traditional body language, and it's the best option, yes, but it helps fill that void, and it doesn't fill the void because research and what we know is that when we're working on video calls, we are seeing our own face on the screen, which is not natural to us. We're used to really being focused on other people's faces and cues. We are dealing with screen freezes. We are dealing with echoes. We are dealing with over-talking one another and without understanding and reading the cues of who's about to speak because we're seeing little boxes. So the levels of Zoom fatigue are much higher because it's much harder to read a lot of those cues, and it's not natural for us to be seeing our face on the screen as much as engaging with others. I do think that there are nuances across introverts and extroverts. Some introverts are, and I would say not all of them, but some of them are really thriving in a virtual setting where they don't need to focus on bombastic, gregarious body language like they would in a room and constantly being in those meeting rooms. They can sit behind their desk, they can think about ideas, they can share them in virtual chat tools without being over-talked or having to take their turn in a meeting. But in the meeting, we're missing, a lot of that, I would call it the creative flow and brainstorming that the mute button kills. Because we don't have that creative flow of, oh, you're on mute, and then it's awkward, and then we jump back in, or people talking over one another. And so I think what we really can do in this moment is think about what are the advantages of the power of video meetings that we've learned? What are best practices we can take away, whether it's the lack of turn taking and using chat tools and then being able to call on people. Research shows that the first 3 people that speak in a meeting drive the rest of the meeting. in terms of the discussion. And we can create a lot of Zoom think if the three people just speak and then we can't read those cues from other teammates that may have a different opinion. But at the same time, those face-to-face meetings give us a whole new layer of creative energy that we will never get on the screen.
Erica, thank you so much. Our 30 minutes is up. So thank you so much for sharing this message and for helping out so many people. I mean, this is like the perfect time for this. Not that it wasn't great a year ago, but obviously this has really risen in importance over the past 7-8 months. And so we thank you for joining us for our Premier's Free Virtual Friday.
Thank you, Brian. Thank you for all who joined today.
Great. So again, thank you for everyone. You can learn more about Erica on our website or just contact your agent. Coming up next week, we have John Gordon, who's the author of The Energy Bus. He's going to be talking about the #1 way to determine success. And you can go to freevirtualfridays.com right now and register for that. Thank you again on behalf of Premier Speakers and National Speakers for joining us for Free Virtual Fridays.